Carson was one of the most polished, composed, and dignified men in American television history. He could control a room with a pause, a smile, or a single raised eyebrow. Yet even Carson had moments when the fire inside him slipped through. These are the 9 women who left Carson shaken, tempted, and thinking beyond a simple conversation, through beauty, charm, nerve, and intelligence. Watch until the end, because the final woman made actual physical contact with Johnny, right in the middle of the studio. 1. Barbara Walters turned the tables. Barbara Walters entered Carson's stage with the instincts of an interviewer, not a guest. Most celebrities came to that desk hoping Johnny would guide them safely through the room. Barbara came in studying him. She knew how quickly confidence could crack when the spotlight moved in the wrong direction. And Barbara's first move was simple. Make the audience look at Johnny. The impact is direct. She makes Johnny's body part of the conversation. For a host who usually controlled the gaze, that is a clean reversal. The audience catches it instantly. Carson handles it with elite discipline. He does not chase the heat. He does not flatten it into cheapness. He lets the laugh rise, keeps his posture, and protects the elegance of the room. That is why the next move matters. Johnny decides to answer Barbara in her own language. Watch the speed of the exchange. Barbara takes the hit. Johnny pulls back at once because he knows exactly how close he has moved to the edge. Then, she turns the danger into a punchline so clean that both of them break. That laughter is the release valve. 2 professionals have walked straight up to the line, touched it, and stepped away before the moment loses class. After the show, a backstage staffer revealed that Johnny genuinely wanted to ask Barbara to go somewhere private. He stopped himself. That is Carson's real achievement here. He could feel the impulse, measure the danger, and still turn the entire charge into television that remained sharp, funny, and controlled. 2. Raquel Welch. Anyone who watched Carson long enough knows how rare this was. He could handle movie stars, comedians, politicians, and chaos without letting the surface crack. Here, the guest has not even appeared yet, and the king of late night is already slipping off rhythm. That woman was Raquel Welch. A former sex symbol, yes, yet never a careless one. Her power was controlled, measured, wrapped in elegance before it ever became temptation. And when she finally sits beside him, the mood changes again. Look at the gestures between them. The hand, the smile, the softness in Carson's face. This is not the look he gives a routine booking. There is affection there, and something even more delicate than admiration. Raquel understands it completely. She does not push too hard. She does not need to. She lets the moment breathe, then touches the wire again. This is not young flirtation. It has patience. It has memory. It has the quiet confidence of a woman who has spent years being watched and learned exactly how much power lives in restraint. That was what made her so dangerous to Carson. After the show, he could not quite leave the feeling alone. When the chance came, Carson took a flight to see Raquel in person. Yet the story never collapsed into scandal. It remained friendship. That is the strange beauty of this moment. Hollywood sold Raquel Welch as a bombshell. Carson discovered something more refined, a woman whose sensuality could look like grace, and whose most suggestive moments still carried the warmth of genuine affection. 3. Anne Margaret lit Carson up. Raquel Welch tried to impress Carson with elegance. Barbara Walters came at him from the side, sharp and playful. Anne Margaret reached another level entirely. She did not simply flirt with Carson. She turned the conversation into something dangerously close to a date, with the whole country watching from the other side of the camera. Listen carefully to her first move. That is the work of a very sophisticated woman. She lifts Carson up, lets him feel admired, lets that smile spread across his face. Then, with one soft word, she keeps the power exactly where she wants it. The message is almost wicked. You are attractive. You know how to charm a room. Yet with me, there is still something childish about you. Carson hears it. His face gives him away. He cannot fight it cleanly, partly because Anne Margaret is beautiful, partly because she is right. So Carson does something he rarely has to do on his own stage. He attacks back. Today, people would call that a pickup line. Carson makes it sound like a joke about the studio, the carpet, the refrigerator, the office after hours. Yet, the room understands the temperature instantly. And look at Anne Margaret. For a moment, even she seems pulled toward him. Carson was not only a polite host, he was a player when the moment required it. And still, that was not his final move. There is no real mystery left after that. For a few seconds, the king of television truly falls for the woman in front of him. Then the professional returns. The line is restored. The spell becomes laughter. That was old late night at its finest. Real, direct, electric. Anne Margaret did not create a scandal. She created a date the audience was allowed to watch. 4. Goldie Hawn disarmed. Carson. Goldie Hawn was famous for a brightness Hollywood could not manufacture. She looked young, open, spontaneous, always moving with the moment instead of trying to control it. That was her charm. She seemed to glow before the conversation even began. And that glow once caught Johnny Carson right in the eyes. Carson begins with the obvious surface. The dress, the look, the way Goldie seems to light up the room. Goldie turns it into something stranger and softer. She does not simply accept the compliment. She floats around it, plays with it. That is what made her difficult for Carson. He could handle glamour. He could handle seduction. Goldie gave him something harder to pin down, innocence with electricity inside it. The conversation becomes even more dangerous when it moves toward fantasy. This is where Carson loses the easy path. Goldie talks about sensuality, like it is a feeling passing through the air. She speaks about imagination, connection, instinct, and the mind. The subject is adult. Her face stays clear. Her voice stays bright. That combination makes the whole exchange quietly disarming. Carson cannot turn it into a simple joke, because Goldie never makes it feel cheap enough for that. She makes desire sound curious, almost innocent, almost spiritual. Years after leaving late night, Carson told an old friend that Goldie was one of the women who stayed hardest to understand. It was not her direct opinions that unsettled him. It was her face, her expressions, that effortless, transparent innocence. Carson admitted there was a moment when his heart flashed. 5. Audrey Hepburn, refined Carson. You could not be casual around Audrey Hepburn. Something about her made people sit a little straighter, choose their words more carefully, and remember that charm could still have manners. Carson understood that better than anyone. This is not the usual Johnny Carson. He is not warming up a room before another star walks out. He is preparing himself for the arrival of someone rare. His voice already carries a kind of respect before Audrey even reaches the chair. That was her effect. Audrey Hepburn did not enter a room by force. She changed it by refinement. The air became softer. The jokes became cleaner. Even Carson, the most relaxed man in late night, seemed to understand that she required a different kind of attention. Then, the conversation moves toward a word Hollywood never quite knew how to place on her. Audrey handles the subject with that light, almost mischievous grace. She does not reject it sharply. She lets the idea pass through the room, smiles at it, and makes it harmless. That gives Carson permission to say what he really means. This is the most elegant compliment in the entire conversation. Carson is not talking about the obvious surface. He is trying to describe a deeper kind of allure. Intelligence, restraint, softness, and the strange power of a woman who never needs to prove she is desirable. A few weeks after the taping, Carson told a close old friend that he still thought about Hepburn, not as a lover, not as a private interest, as something far stranger, a rare, almost unreal creation of nature. That was Audrey's hold on him. She did not make Carson lose control. She made him become more careful with his own desire. 6. Carol Wayne's dangerous dress. Carol Wayne belonged to a very particular kind of old Hollywood. She had the blonde glamour, the comic timing, and the soft, teasing presence that made her feel instantly familiar. Audiences had seen that image across television, film comedy, and the kind of late-night sketches that made her seem less like a visitor than part of the furniture of show business. To a young Johnny Carson, that image was powerful. Wayne arrived with the look of someone the camera already understood, and from their first meeting, it clearly worked on him. Watch the detail Carson cannot quite leave alone. The joke is about wardrobe rules. The reaction is about attraction. Carson keeps circling the dress because it gives him a safe way to discuss what everyone in the room can already see. He sounds amused. He sounds professional. Underneath that, he is studying her. Wayne lets him. She does not rush to protect the moment. She lets the old Hollywood rhythm play out. The host notices, the guest smiles, the audience understands, and nobody has to say the dangerous part too directly. Then the conversation moves from looking to imagining. This is where Carson becomes more curious than casual. He asks about the kiss with the energy of a man trying to keep the question technical. Wayne answers with enough sweetness to keep it playful, and enough confidence to make him lean in. Look closely, and you can see the brief confusion in Carson. For a second, he seems to want to take the moment one step further. That was Carson early in the journey. Still learning where the line lived. Still learning how close he could stand to it. In later years, that lesson became part of his greatness. He learned to feel the pull, respect it, and turn it into television without letting the moment own him. 7. Lucille Ball, too bold for Carson.
Would you welcome?
Have you ever
Lucille
seen Johnny
Ball.
Carson go silent on his own show? It did not happen often. Carson could handle nervous actors, loud comedians, political guests, and absolute chaos at the desk. Yet one woman managed to make him shrink for a second, almost like a schoolboy caught doing something wrong. That woman was Lucille Ball. By then, Lucy was more than a television star. She was American comedy royalty. She had turned marriage, embarrassment, jealousy, panic, and domestic disaster into national entertainment. She knew timing so well that she could walk into Carson's room and steal the spotlight from the greatest talk show host in the country. And she did it with a question nobody else would have dared to ask. That is Lucy at full power. She does not flirt like a guest trying to impress the host. She attacks like a comic general who knows exactly where the weak wall is. Carson pauses because the question is too blunt for television. Then Lucy makes it worse by sending the answer to commercial break. That is evil. Beautifully evil. After the break, Carson tries to pretend the backstage conversation was harmless. The punchline is that it was about plant bugs, from sex talk to houseplants in 30 seconds. Only Lucy could make that feel natural. Later, when Carson tries to push her into a racy magazine question, she refuses the bait. She knows the trap. She has been famous too long to walk into a man's question just because it is printed on paper. Then, Lucy lands one more shot. Look at Carson there. For a second, he has no clean comeback. Lucy has cornered him with grandmotherly confidence and nightclub timing. After the show, Carson told a friend he never expected Lucille Ball to be that bold. He also admitted that boldness made her even more fascinating, and he could not wait to talk with her again. They remained close until Lucy passed away in 1989. That was her gift. She could embarrass Carson, delight him, and still leave him grateful for the ambush. 8. Betty White, too sweet to be safe.
Thankfully,
Betty
right here on
White looked
NBC.
like
Would
the
you welcome Miss
safest
Betty
woman
White?
in American television. That was the trick. The smile was warm. The voice was gentle. The timing was so clean that people trusted her before the joke even landed. Then she would slide one line across the table and leave a grown man looking for somewhere to put his hands. Carson learned that very quickly. Early in the conversation, he tried to describe that easy connection people sometimes feel with each other. Betty bent the line just enough to make him correct himself in public. That was the warning shot. Then she went further. That is classic Betty White. She takes a subject that should be far too racy for polite television, dresses it in domestic friendliness, and makes it sound like a neighborhood story. Carson catches the rhythm instantly because he knows he is dealing with someone who can be outrageous without ever seeming vulgar. The genius is in the face. Betty can say the dangerous part and still look like she is offering dessert after dinner. Carson survives the first ambush. Then, she pulls him closer to the joke. Now the danger has a name. Johnny is no longer talking around old friends, old marriages, or television games. Betty has placed him inside the story. For a second, the great host has to decide how honest he can be without letting the room turn too hot. And he enjoys it. That is the charm of this exchange. Betty does not seduce Carson in the usual way. She outtimes him. She makes him laugh, makes him defend himself, then makes him admit just enough to keep the room sparkling. Betty White was too sweet to be safe. And Carson knew it. That authenticity, no modern talk show can even reach that bar, let alone surpass. 9. Suzanne Summers went too far. Finally, we arrive at the woman who pushed Carson the farthest, Suzanne Summers. By this point, we have seen elegance, wit, innocence, timing, and old Hollywood charm. Suzanne brought something more direct. Her signals were not buried under suggestion. They were bright, physical, and almost impossible to misunderstand. She started with one line that changed the temperature of the room. That pause tells you everything. Carson realizes he is dealing with someone unusually fearless. Suzanne does not rush to clean it up. She lets the implication hang there, then watches him try to recover inside his own show. For a man who built a career on recovery, that is a serious hit. Then she moves closer. Now the chemistry has a body. Suzanne talks about human connection, then turns Carson into the demonstration. The hand becomes the whole scene. He can smile, explain, and keep the audience comfortable, yet everyone can feel the charge sitting right there on the desk. Later, Carson admitted that, at moments, the air became almost too hot to handle. He came close to crossing a line, then pulled himself back. That is where old late night had a power modern television rarely understands. Today, one awkward look becomes a headline. One suggestive pause becomes a clip farm. One charged exchange gets stripped for reactions before the moment even has time to breathe. Carson came from a harder school. He could let the room heat up without begging for scandal. He could feel the instinct, measure the danger, and still protect the guest, the audience, and the show. Suzanne tested him openly. Carson felt it. Then he controlled it. That restraint is why these old moments still live. They were dangerous because the line was real, and elegant because Carson knew exactly when to stop. Carson knew exactly when a glance became dangerous. These women brought beauty, nerve, desire, and that old Hollywood electricity you cannot fake anymore. Some made him blush. Some made him lean in. Some reminded him there was still a man behind the desk. Yet Carson controlled every spark with timing, grace, and restraint. That was television at its highest level. Which moment felt the most real to you? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe for more classic television secrets.